got in the system. And today our guest is Greg Smith, president of Oasis community of Western Michigan. Uh, Thank you for coming today.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
And how did you get involved with Oasis?
Well, about 14 years ago, my husband died, and I had two small kids, a 7-year-old who's disabled, he's cognitively impaired, and a daughter who was 10. And I was feeling kind of lost and didn't quite know where I was going with the kids and my life and what was going to happen and how was I going to take care of the special needs child when I was, elderly. And I'm thinking, okay, what do I need to do? And so I figured I better get my stuff together. And a guy that was giving some lectures on special needs trusts and planning, financial planning for special needs. One of the guys, Steve Johnson, said that he was getting a small group together of parents to talk about maybe what kinds of things we could do as parents to be less in a bubble. Because, parents with disabled children tend to isolate themselves with their child, and they don't get out as much and they don't meet people, and they really limit themselves to people who also have disabled children. And so Steve said he was going to put this group together, and I jumped on thinking, I really need this. I need to know what's going on. My kid's only 7 at the time, but I need to know what's coming. What happens when he hits 18? What happens when he's 20 or 30, or what's going to happen? I didn't know. So I figured I could meet with these people and they would kind of help me, and I didn't know if I had anything to offer them. And Steve ended up becoming the president of Oasis, and he named the group and got us started. And he's still very actively involved. He's just the immediate past president now. But we realized we needed social interaction amongst ourselves, but our kids also needed social interaction. And we needed a lot of educational things. We didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know a lot about Social Security or our disability benefits, DHHS, Medicaid, Medicare, all that stuff just was totally confusing to most of us. So we met on a regular basis for a little while, and then we just the parents, and then we decided, what really was bothering us most is what will happen when we die. Do we have family who takes care of our child? Do we have to put them in an adult foster care? What do we do? So then we started focusing more on housing. And that was something that I was really interested in, because I'm thinking I needed to plan for that. I have my daughter lives in Wisconsin. She's not really interested in taking care of my son full time, and he's pretty capable. So I don't think he needs somebody to take care of him full time. So that's how I got my foot in the door.
Okay, it was basically based around your personal experience.
Right. And all the other parents in this group that we started all had children with disabilities. Most of them had adult children with disabilities, kids that were in their 20s, 30s, 40s. I was the only one that had a little guy at home. So I figured, I could suck up all the knowledge that these people had accumulated over the years on how to deal with everything from Social Security to, I didn't even know what a CLS person was. I had no idea, because that wasn't available when he was 7. So I wasn't even sure where I was going with any of that.
Yes. And just based on my experience, when parents isolate their disabled children, they don't realize what harm they're doing them, as far as the future is concerned. Because some
Absolutely.
say mom and dad are not always going to be there, much as we wish they were.
Right. And we heard horror stories of dad dies and mom is taking care of an adult child with disabilities, and eventually mom gets quite ill and that child is taking care of mom. Then mom passes and that child may be well into their 50s, has never lived alone, and now either siblings or the system just says, oh well, you've got to go to an adult foster care, and all of a sudden, to them that feels like a prison, because you're eating on their schedule, you're eating what they're feeding you, you have no choice in anything. And that, I think, scares all of us. We don't want that for our child. Why would you, why would you want that for your disabled child if you don't want it for your neurotypical child? If your other child is living a life of their own and getting to pick and choose whatever they do, then why isn't your disabled child having some choice in what happens in their lives?
Right, exactly. Exactly. And for our next question, how would you describe Oasis?
Well, we're a parent-led group, so even our board still, after 13 years, is parents, and we now have a sibling. We actually have one of our disabled members has been a board member for, probably 8 or 9 years now. We have a sibling on the board, so we still try and keep it family oriented, so people have a real stake in the organization. It's not an organization that you've got just hired staff making all the decisions. And so the board of directors is still people who have skin in the game, kids in the program. And what we've been focusing on is housing, trying to get some kind of alternatives to the adult foster care system and other, assisted living kind of options. Again, I would rather those be absolute last resorts. I'm not going to say anything terrible about adult foster care, but it's not something we all want for our children. So I would like, just be able to put our kids into any old housing anywhere. But as you know, with restricted incomes, a lot of times they don't qualify for just a standard apartment building. They need to get into something that takes a voucher or will accept low income housing. And then there's quite often a waiting list. So, well,
Extensively.
pardon?
Extensive waiting
Oh
list.
yeah, sometimes they can be 5-10 years waiting list. Yeah, I know that. And so what we want to do is we try to have some educational things for the parents. Before COVID, we were doing a lot of socialization things for both the parents and the kids. So, and I'm still calling him a kid because he's my kid. I don't think of a 50-year-old person as a kid. I'm just thinking there are children. So our young adult members were still getting together and doing, they'd go bowling, they'd have pizza night, they'd do game night, chili cook-offs, all sorts of fun things just to get them out and about and doing things. And then, of course, with COVID, most of that stopped. But we have one incredible mom who did Zoom activities and got the kids involved. And they were doing things like getting to know you pieces on Zoom, or they would do scavenger hunts, bingo, things like that they could still do over Zoom and feel like at least they were socializing and not being completely cut off.
Right.
So we do that. We try to do training sessions. That's been really hard over Zoom because you really need to get to know each other, and that's just really hard on Zoom. So, or any virtual format. But we typically would do training, and that's to not only to train our young adults on the things they need to know to be able to move out on their own, but also to train the parents to let go, and to train the parents realizing that they need to allow their child to do these things, even if it might mean some small failures along the way. That's the only way they're going to learn. So even if it's quicker for me to just say, okay, I just get out of the way. You're making a mess. I'll take care of it. In the end, that doesn't help him. It's better if he has to clean up his own mess. We just want our adult children with disabilities to live a full life, to have the choices in their life, maybe where they live, maybe where they eat, maybe who they live with, what they do for work or volunteering, whether they go to church or not, where they go to church or not, all those things, travel, relationships, friendships. We want them to be able to have those choices. And sometimes, it's harder to get the parents to let go than it is the kids. But we're getting there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That leads to our next question. Could you explain the different ways folks can get involved in your program?
They can volunteer, but with COVID right now, there hasn't been a whole lot of volunteer opportunities. We haven't done any real fundraising other than Giving Tuesday, which is a virtual event. So we plan to have more things, hopefully in the spring, where we can have more activities. But volunteering, so we could use somebody in marketing. I wrote a couple of these down: marketing, planning, fundraising, photography, social media expertise, those kinds of things. We rely on everybody who is a member needs to spend a little time doing some volunteer work for the organization, whatever you're good at. So that's been beneficial. It's just hard to do, like I said, with COVID. They could get involved as members too. We're looking to find families who don't realize that their kids have choices, and teach them that their kids have choices, and preferably catch them when their kids are kids, when they're still in elementary, middle school, and get them to realize that they need to teach them some independent skills at a very young age. Don't wait until they're 30. Don't wait until a parent has died and the other one is sick. We need to start much younger. So trying to find those families is tough. So if people know of families with younger children, that would be fantastic. It would be good for them to get involved. For training materials, we use a program called Getting a Place of My Own, and it goes through a kind of a skill building section where you figure out what you know how to do and what you don't know how to do, where you need help, where you might be able to learn how to do it, but it might take some time, some things you can learn right away. So it kind of evaluates what you're capable of. Then you know what you need help with before you move out.
We're talking about the child here.
Yes. Yep. So that would help them, if they don't know how to do their laundry, simple things like that. And that, as well as I do, every apartment building has different kinds of washing machines. So there's a learning curve to all of those. And things, even dishwashers, they can all be different. But at least if they have the concept down of how to sort your clothes, how to wash them, how much soap to use, you can work on the buttons once they get moved in. And then, what things can your CLS person work with you? And again, these can be long-term. It can be years before you figure something out, and maybe never. Maybe you'll always need help with that. We have some members who are physically disabled that will not be able to make their own bed because they just can't physically do that. These are the things we want them to start thinking about at a young age so they can have some goals. How do you use the bus system? Can I use the bus system? Can I get training on the bus system? Does a bus go where I live? Do I need to live someplace closer where there is a bus? These things, everybody needs to start thinking about this at a much younger age. And that's been kind of our push lately is start training these kids at a much younger age to be more independent. So that's pretty much our how you can get involved. let me see. Oh, we have for some of our, we have a group of about 8 young adults right now that are living on their own. And when I say young, that ranges up to the mid 40s. So, that's still younger than me. And that's from about mid 20s to mid 40s. And they're living on their own, not all in the same apartment building. They're scattered around. There's 5 of them in Emerald Flats. 4 in Emerald Flats participate in the Community Builder program. Our community builder is our only staff person. She only works 8 hours a week. She works in a transition program for the rest of her job, which is unassociated with us. But her job is to be kind of the in-between person so that disabled adult gets out and about, socializes, does activities, events. That group meets and they might do games, or they had a cheese and wine party the other night. They can do fun things together, but they also get to know people in their buildings or in their neighborhood. And she's kind of their go-between. So if there's a block party or something, or a potluck going on, maybe she talks to each of them that are going to the potluck and kind of gives them some ideas what they want to make or bring. Maybe she even helps them with their CLS person to get something made for the party. And so she's become kind of their social ambassador. She finds all sorts of things, and not things that are specifically for the disabled, but things, just whatever sounds interesting in town. So she'll get out there and make reservations or make sure that they all know how to get there. She'll set up dates and times, and they've been having a really good time with her. She started in early October. So they've spent a few months getting out and about, having a good time.
So like an activities coordinator.
Yeah, that's kind of what she is. Yeah, she also helps if there's a situation where roommates maybe aren't getting along, or some others within the group maybe don't get along as well as they should, or maybe there's somebody in the group who really doesn't want to socialize very much but shows up, and she just kind of helps soften things so that maybe they will get more involved.
Yeah, these are the kinds of things we go through when you start to live independently, unfortunately.
Right. And then, we have some adults with autism that may not be the most sociable. So she works on that. Her background is very heavy in the autistic community. So she works on those kinds of relationships, and she's been pretty successful so far. So we're really happy. And like I said, the young adults adore her. They just think she's wonderful. She's fun. She's young, like they are. She loves to get out and do things. So that's been a lot of fun.
So it's somebody they can associate with.
Yep. They can associate and relate. They definitely can understand her, and she's very similar in age to all of them. So she's right in the middle of the 20-something to 45, 44. So she's right about halfway through there. Housing, I told you that we were trying to find spots. We're working, there's 2 of us in the group on the board who work in the construction field as our careers. So we've both worked with some of the nonprofit housing groups in the area in Kent County, and we've worked with them towards finding someplace for us, and not a secluded building that's just for disabled people. What we want is inclusive community. So we got our foot in the door at Emerald Flats, and that's a project that ICCF, the Inner City Christian Federation, put together. And of the 50, there's 50 apartments in there. They're mixed income, which is kind of nice. So you've got low income all the way up to a much higher market rate. And then they have they have 50 apartments, and we have just 3 apartments that one is an Oasis apartment that we master lease, and the other 2 were apartments that the young people got on their own merit and were able to get in. So we figure we have a few people in that building, and then hopefully we'll have others in the neighborhood, and that's what forms our community builder group. But Emerald Flats is up on the northeast side of the city. It's an old elementary school that was converted to housing. And Lakeshore, we have a Lakeshore group, and that group they're also looking for housing, but we haven't really gotten to a point where anybody's been trained there, fully trained, so that they could move out. So they've been focusing on legislative issues quite heavily. They're in Ottawa County, and they did not have access to independent sports coordinators and independent CLS staff. So they've just got legislation through so that they will be doing that. I don't know when it goes into effect or if it already has, but that's something they focused on because they wanted to get more independence in those areas so that they could pick and choose who their child would be working with instead of just being assigned somebody from an agency. So they're coming along too. And so our long-term plans for Oasis would be to have parent-led offshoots all over the place. You know, we would still expect it to be parent-led in all locations. You know, it's great to have staff, but we don't want it to turn into just another agency. You know, I think agencies lose their humanity sometimes, and we don't want that. We want everybody to understand why we have this goal of getting housing options. And we'd like those options to be much more varied. We'd like to have houses, apartments, condos, you name it. We don't want to own them. Oasis doesn't want to be a big property owner, but we would like to get leases, whether it be a master lease or whether our disabled adults have leases of their own that they can hold on to. We do have some members whose family have purchased condos, so that works. It's in their name or a family member name until they pass. But in the end, I guess our goal is to get as many people into a variety of housing that is not your typical adult foster care for people with cognitive and physical disabilities.
If I understand correctly, you are trying to stay away from a cookie cutter type
Right.
system.
Absolutely right. Yes, we would really like it to be as much choice as everybody can have, whether it's family or whether it's the disabled adult or both, preferably. So that will look differently for everybody. And everybody living on their own will look differently because what my son chooses may be completely different than what his friend chooses as far as how he lives and where he lives. And, you know, whether they, some people may be able to drive and they have more options to live off the bus line and further out. And if you do live further out, how do you get in and how do you socialize with the others? So the goal is to socialize with not only other people within Oasis, but the other people in your neighborhood and your community. So we want that variety. And then, you know, you don't have to socialize in the same way everybody else does. If there's a wine and cheese party and you don't feel like going, you don't go. That's all there is to it. That's your choice. And we want people to be able to have as much choice and options, as many options as they can have.
Yeah, just so they don't feel restricted
Right.
by a
Right.
system per se.
Right. And yeah, by the system or by their parents or by us or by any restriction that I don't want them to put restrictions on themselves only because that's what they see. You know, that's what's out there. So that's what I have to do. And I don't want people to feel that that's what they have to do. I want them to challenge themselves as well.
Well, that's a wonderful thing. I hope it really works out.
I hope so. So far, so good. It's taken a lot of years. Our board went down to Evanston, Illinois, and we were trained by a group from the Center for Independent Futures. And they've been doing this about 20 years. And at the time, we had been doing it maybe 6 or 8 years. So we felt like, okay, we gotta pick up the pace here. We're really struggling, but we weren't sure where to even begin. Everybody has such different ideas, and there's probably not, no, maybe couple of times a month, I still get emails or phone calls asking if I can give somebody the name of a good AFC home, or if we have room in one of our AFC homes to put them in. And I have to explain that's not what we do. That's the exact opposite of what we do.
Mm.
But, I get those calls all the time from parents. All the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that just goes to show how much society stereotypes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially our young adults with cognitive disabilities. I hadn't realized that, when my son was that young. But as he got older, and I see all of his friends and his age group, he's 21, so his age group grew up with the ADA laws, and they grew up with more inclusion, even if we had to fight for it in schools and healthcare and, in society in general. But I see it with the older generation. So somebody who may be 40, 50, 60 years old, they pretty much took what was given to them and told, if somebody said, okay, you're going to be moving into a nursing home. Well, okay, I'm 30, but I guess I have no other options. And I grew up north in a small town, and there's a senior housing, independent housing complex for seniors. And that's where anybody with a cognitive disability went to live when their parents died, if they could manage on their own. If they couldn't, they were put into an AFC home. But if they could manage on their own, they were moved into senior living, even if they were 30 years old, 25 years old, because that was really the only other option for them. And I thought, well, that really is awful. I thought of my son. My son, I'm sure, would love to live with a bunch of little old ladies who are cooking for him and spoiling him rotten. But, that's not, I just don't think that's good for anybody.
Right.
I think he needs to be out there with friends of his own and his own age group. And, and part of our organization's focus is expanding your circles of friends. So you're not just limiting yourself to other disabled families and disabled friends that you went to school with, but other people outside of that. Expand those circles and try to get out there in the community and into the general population, because that's where we should be. We shouldn't be stereotyped and off to the fringes or in our own little secluded area. And we still have people who are very upset when they find out that we don't have a building full of disabled people tucked away somewhere, because that's not what we do either. And, that might work for some people, and I can understand parents are scared to death that somebody will take advantage of their child one way or another. But we have to train them to take care of themselves, and maybe to be a little cynical and be a little suspicious and not be quite so trusting. I hate to say that, but we all have to be a little cynical and not be too trusting.
Yeah, I agree totally.
Yeah.
Our last question here, how can the community give out Oasis?
Well, you can look at our Zoom page, and you can become members on Zoom, which is just free. The Zoom, be a part of the Zoom group. There's no cost to that, and you can always see what we're doing on there. Anybody can look at our website anytime and find out all sorts of information about the group. They can come to any of our lectures. We still have been doing our educational programs, but we're doing them on Zoom, so they're virtual. And those are all free and open to the public. The only time we do anything that's members only, some of our face-to-face socialization is members only. We typically, when it's not COVID, we would typically have a couple of potlucks a year to get non-members in to see who the group is and get to meet people. And then if they want, they can become members, and then they can participate in the training programs and all the activities, and really, the only reason we have a membership is so we know how many bodies are involved at any one time and who's serious. Our membership fee is, for general membership, is $45 a year. So it's pretty low. And that's really to make sure are you serious about doing this, or are you just shopping? If you're serious about getting your kid trained, then there's some higher fees for the training. And when they start getting into the community builder group, the fees go up to help pay for that community builder. But that's still, it's pretty minimal. We try to keep it low because we know people are living on their Social Security benefits. We're not expecting that people have big old trust funds somewhere. We expect that they have to live within their means, within their Social Security benefits, and we're not counting on parents adding to that fund.
Yeah, that's important.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we think so. So right now, our goal is to get as many people aware of who we are, what we want, what we're doing, and that we are the alternative to adult foster cares, segregated housing, all those things that have happened in the past that we're trying to get away from. And we honestly think that that's where government funding is going, because now you have more choice with how your money is spent. But again, nobody wants to have to rely on government housing, institutional housing, that kind of thing. We want to get as far away from that as we could possibly get.
And before we go, what is your website address and number for Oasis?
If you go to, just a sec, let me get to the website and I can tell you exactly. It's Oasis Community, all one word, .info. So it's an informational site. It's not a .com. We don't make money off of it or anything. And then Facebook, if you just go to Oasis Community of West Michigan on Facebook, you'll get our group. And look under groups. We have a page that we have tried to eliminate, but I think it's still hanging out there because I don't think you can ever eliminate anything on Facebook. I think it's forever. But we had just a page, and that wasn't very interactive. So we became a group, a public group, so that people could interact more, and they could ask questions. We could potentially have answers, and some of our members may answer. Somebody recently asked something about she was changing her son's insurance because the program he had was not going to cover his meds or something anymore, and so she was asking advice. What programs do the rest of you use? So those kinds of things. We try to keep it not too personal. We don't want a lot of personal information, and we don't want anybody ranting and going on about a bad doctor they've had or things like that. We want to keep it, friendly, informational, useful.
Well, thanks for coming today.
Oh, you're welcome. Good luck, and stay in touch. Definitely get on our Facebook page yourself and keep an eye on what we're up to.